but not only were they sticks, they were on fire. And they were running around near the fire, and there was not a mother to be seen. There was no fathers to be seen either, to be fair. A bit of a wild situation. Alrighty. It's great to be in the house on Father's Day, yeah? Nice to be here. I'm going to do one father's joke just because I'd hate to be up here and have a mic and not be able to do one Father's Day joke. There is an Irishman and he wins the lottery. And he always wanted to go to Spain. So he goes into the travel agency, he goes, "Oh, I'd like to go to Spain." It's my bad accent. And the guy says, "No problems. You can go tomorrow as a plane." He goes, "Do you know how to speak Spanish?" And he goes, "Oh, no, can't speak any Spanish." So the guy says, "Here's a number of a guy who can teach you how to speak Spanish. Go and see him." So he goes and sees this guy. He says, "I'm flying to Spain tomorrow and I want to learn how to speak Spanish." And the guy's thinking, how can I teach this guy how to speak Spanish in one day? He said, "When you get there, just speak really slowly." So he goes, "Oh, no problems." So he gets on the plane, flies to Spain, gets in, goes to the nearest pub when he gets there. He goes up to the barman and he says, "Hello, can I please get a drink?" And the guy behind the bar looks at him a bit strangely and he says, "Yes, you can." He goes, "Oh, this is pretty easy. What sort of drinks do you have?" And the guy behind the bar says, "We have wine, beer and soft drinks." He goes, "Oh, I'll have a beer, please." It's going to go on for a while. And the guy says, behind the bar says, "So, where are you from?" He goes, "Oh, I'm from Dublin." He goes, "Oh, so am I." And he says, "Well, if you're from Dublin and I'm from Dublin, why are we speaking Spanish?" That's it. No more. No more dad jokes. That'll do, eh? I've got a short message for us today. I'm not going to go long again. Everyone wants to probably go get a free burger. Bless the burgers, eh? What a great van to be allowed to go on our side, eh? Good choice whoever made that. I'd just like to, before we begin today, actually, I just want to thank one of the fathers that have been in our house for a long time. His name is Tony Davis. Who knows Tony? Put your hand up if you know Tony. For 17 years, Tony has managed the land of our property here, yeah? He has mowed it, whippersnipped it, done everything, done it on a severe budget most of the time. He spent probably half his life putting back together the machines and stuff like that. Luckily, a couple of years ago, we bought him a really cool ride-on. Tony's come to his time now, yeah? He's sort of finishing up doing that now. But I really wanted to honour him in the house this morning. He's not here physically, but let's just be thankful so much for Tony. He's such a character, but he is one of those men that is just behind the scenes. You'd really hardly ever know that he's ever even done that, but he literally comes and does. They're the guys that also do the gardens up the back here, him and his wife Jeannie. So I just wanted to give a big thank you and a shout out to him, because now he's gone, we all have to learn, and I had to learn how to ride the ride-on mower the other day. Let me tell you, when I went down the front there, thought I was going to drive myself into the traffic. There was a little bit of me concerned about pulling the wrong lever and ended up in the middle of the traffic. So anyway, anyone who's keen to sort of start helping out with the mowing around here, I think we're sort of going to be doing that. But anyway, that's another thing. But anyway, I just wanted to pay respects to Tony and all that he's done, yeah? He, I think typifies that sort of fatherly sort of aspect. Alrighty, so we'll just get into the message, yeah? So it can be a mixed emotion, I think, for many people of the fathers. They can't it, you know, depending on your experience of your earthly father. Some of it can be a great day. Now, for me, I've been a very blessed person. My father has been an amazing man in my life, and he has been a constant, and he's probably comes to closest to sainthood that I think I've ever met of a person. He's such a lovely man. But I know for a lot of people, that isn't the actual feeling that they might get around this day. And I also feel that the role of men and fathers in society has taken a beating over sort of recent years, with a lot of things sort of being, the role of a man and a father has been blurred. Domestic violence is on the rise, mainly led by men and fathers. Single fathers have risen. In 2012, there was 16% of families had a single father. Now it's 20.7%. So 20% of families out there have a single father. running sort of things and stuff. So there are some things that have gone on. And again, sometimes the Bible has been accused of adding to the problem in society. There's its archaic and sexist comments about what men should be and that they should be the head of a household and, run things and stuff like that, with this overwhelming poor example in the background. Yeah, this is a context I think that we unfortunately live in this world. So this morning I thought I would take on one of the texts that is probably renowned for sort of doing that. But I really want us to get the heart of what God actually says. And one of the things that I think if you've read the Bible for long enough, you understand that there are key concepts that you need to understand one bit of it to actually make sense of the other. Does that make sense? I think there are a lot of things that if you read at face value, you mightn't understand what it actually gets. But again, if you actually understand it, you can open up what God is really trying to talk about. Something that on the outside can seem offensive can actually be just godly wisdom. So we're going to read Ephesians 5:21 to probably 33. This is called Instructions for a Christian Household. That's how it starts out. And it starts off by saying, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. This is a bit I think that most people don't really focus on right at the beginning. It says submit to one another out of reverence for God. Now submit means to surrender. Surrender to each other out of reverence. And reverence is a feeling of deep respect or of awe. Reverence can be a feeling of awe for someone, and it can be described, especially if it's put with a word with reverence, that can show intense respect. So out of deep respect for Christ, we are to love each other, especially our partner, out of a place of surrenderedness. Yeah? And I think if we understand that and you come from that perspective, things change a little. Do we surrender to each other with an intense respect for each other? Do you men understand women? No. Do women understand men? No. That's okay. It's the way it's meant to be. Yeah? That's the way God has designed us, yes? And we're supposed to be able to submit to each other as opposed to pointing out the problems with each other. Yeah, without pointing out all of the issues and stuff that go on, it's supposed to be this partnership that we enter into. So there's some keys to being able to do that. And this is where I want us to continue on with this verse today. Wives, submit yourselves to your husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Saviour. Now as the church submit to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Sounds harsh, doesn't it? Can even sound a little unjust. But I think if you come from that foundational concept about surrendering to each other with an intense respect for each other, that verse sort of takes on a bit of a different meaning. Now, I'm not here to really focus on that verse for around women, and again, that can be a whole sermon in itself. Needless to say, there was a lot of context around that sort of statement. But again, I want to focus more on what it means for us husbands and how you actually gain that respect in that position. And again, men, if we're going to gain that respect within our households, you really need to understand what's expected of us. Yeah? If we truly want to be those people that are looked up to in society or within our families, ultimately to begin with, you need to understand the context. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ has loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing with the water through the word, and present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or without blemish, but holy and blameless. That's how we're supposed to be. In this way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one hates their own body, but they feed and care for their body just as Christ does for the church. I love Paul, the writer of the book of Ephesians. When he says it to the women, he just says, just be like Christ. When he says it to the bloke, he has to go into a long-winded explanation about what that looks like. Know what I mean, sisters? not just be like Christ, but you are to treat your wife like your own body. Yeah, now the Bible talks about our body as being a holy temple put aside for godly purposes. Many people in society use it as an entertainment park for their own pleasure, eating, drinking, searching for short-term pleasures all over the place. And I think this is probably one of the key parts where men fall down is, do we love ourselves? Do we respect ourselves and do we love ourselves? Ultimately, because Christ is basically, and Paul the writer here is basically saying, if you truly want to maintain what sort of Christ, the example that he says first you guys have got to love yourselves. If you don't love yourself, then you won't be able to love your family, you won't be able to love anyone else around you that well. And this is the standard that you set, because you don't, neglect your own body. You look after yourself. When I think of Christ and some of the key qualities of his, and I think for most of us in the room, we would probably agree that one of the key qualities of Christ is sacrifice. His surrender. He surrendered to his own will. He laid down his life for all of us. And he was subjective to his Father's will his entire existence on the earth. Christ did not do anything if it wasn't in his Father's will. He says the only thing that I did was in what I've seen my Father do. So to lay things down as a man, it's going to hurt. It's not going to be easy. Firstly, as men of God, do we surrender to ourselves? Do we lay down our needs? Do we lay down our desires, our rights, and do we put others first? Do we provide for those around us, just as we would provide for our own body? Do we provide for our families, for our wives? Do we join to another person's will? Or do we want to exert our will all the time? Now, I'm not saying that you lose yourself. That's not what I'm saying here. Men that lose themselves, that's not helpful either. Yeah? I heard a writer the other day, he said, there needs to be a hint of mongrel, a bit of violence in a man. But it's his ability to control that and to use it for good, to fight for things that need to be fought for, is the important thing. Yeah? Men don't need to be inert. Yeah? The last thing we need to be is inert. We shouldn't be people who don't respond to things that need to be responded to, but we do it in a godly way, not a way that is just out of anger. Do we wash ourselves clean with the Word of God and the godly wisdom that's in this book? This book, yeah? Half of it's written for us to be able to deal with each other and half of it's to deal with God, yeah? It's about our ability to be able to surrender to God ultimately and bring honor to ourselves. Do we surrender to our partners? Do we lay down our life for our partner? Do we protect our partner as Christ protected us? Christ protected us by dying for us. He saved us from an eternity of damnation, of being away from God. Ultimately, remember what Christ did, yeah? That's what he ultimately did. He made a way back to God for all of us, that we didn't have to be away from God. Do we lay our lives down to that much? I love to see fathers that have sort of got this concept. Fathers will just give away their food to children who come and take it off them, knowing that we'll probably get some scraps when they haven't eaten all the food they've got. But, there's a bit of a father that just gives away stuff all the time. And I remember once when Zachy was probably, maybe 8 years old, Tig's wedding. Anyone remember Tig's wedding? Yes? Tig's wedding. Zach just danced with every bridesmaid. He danced with the bride half the night. And then everyone's like, oh, look at Zachy. And I thought to myself, I'm not Swelly anymore. I'm the father of that child. And it was a point in my life where I said, you just need to step back now a bit, yeah? It's like you're living now for your children in a way, Not that I'm forgotten, not that I'm not myself, but at the end of the day, there's a point. And I think, God talks about him as the Father and Christ as the Son, so we can get it, so that we can understand what it means to be that sort of a person, for us to step back. And I think it's an important place in any person's life to just realize that there are other people. Do we die to ourselves and lay our life down for our family? And I know there's many examples of that, and I see it all the time. Do we protect our families in a way that they can get to know God? Do they know God within our daily life? Because I think if we do, then we will gain everything. My children are at an age now where they're starting to get bigger and go out into the world and stuff, and I wonder, have we done enough? Yeah? There's a point where you're like, ultimately as parents, have we done enough? And I can safely say that I probably have definitely not. But ultimately, I hope that they have a relationship with God that's going to carry them through. Because it ain't nothing to do with what I can do for them, yeah? I'm a very limited human being that's had the ability to be able to be their custodians for a little while, but they're ultimately going to be their own people one day. And I just hope that they gain a relationship with God that will carry them through their life. Do we surrender ourselves to not being one of those people that just goes, well, it's someone else's problem? Yeah? Most of life is about, well, it's not my problem. They can just do whatever they want and stuff like that. Or are we people that actually stand up for what is right? Are we men that actually stand up for what is right within our lives and within our families? And that's going to be hard sometimes, to stand up for what is right. One of the qualities that always also struck me about Christ is that he was blameless. He paid the ultimate price and he was blameless. Not once did he sin while he was on the earth, but he had to pay the ultimate price for all of us. So I think just as Christ has done this, it's not going to be easy for us, yeah? We're not going to if we follow Christ, we're going to have to lay down a lot of things, and it's not going to be easy for us. And that's an important concept, because sometimes I think that you can think, well, I've laid everything down and I've done as good as I can, and why are these things happen to me? They're always going to happen, yeah? Life's going to come along and it's going to be difficult for all of us. And it's probably how that we rest into things and what we do, yeah? So let us be people who understand that Christ had to pay the consequences for things that he didn't even do, yeah? So it's not always going to be a walk in the park for all of us. Let's finish with the verse. It says, for this reason, a man will leave his father and his mother and be united with his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery. I love Paul sometimes. He's the king of understating things. But I'm talking about Christ and the church. However, each one of us also must love his wife as he loves himself, and his wife must respect her husband. We are to become one flesh. Yeah? We are to become one. Yeah? And that's the challenge. Ultimately, there's always going to be a challenge, hence the reason we're all probably doing the marriage course. It's going to be a challenge, but ultimately it's a godly challenge that's set before us, and it is a profound thing, Paul says. So again, anything that's profound will take some work. And again, if we show that love in our house, that sacrificial love, we will then gain respect. Then we will actually have that right to be the head of the household. Yeah? If we're men that lead with love, not soft. I'm not talking about us being soft. And if you ever want to read, like Paul and Christ and all that, they weren't soft people. They were just strong inside. Knew their purpose and knew what they were doing. So for many of us in the house here, some of us have had earthly fathers that have been great examples, or maybe not examples at all. But just as we've all got earthly fathers, we also have a heavenly Father. Yeah, that loves us all and knows us all intimately and wants the best for you. And this Bible, it's not an out-of-date text that talks about things in a bad way. It's actually a guide for our entire life, for us to be able to learn to be good husbands, to be good fathers, to be good Christians, with surrendered hearts out of intense respect for each other and for other people around us. If we can show that sort of love, then we will be able to gain everything God has for us. Please have a blessed Father's Day, everybody in the house. Thank you. Are we singing anymore, or are we just going straight out? Are we singing another song, or are we just going to food? You got another song, Pence? See, finish with some. I'll let Dean do the leading.
Yeah. We'll finish with a song. Thank you, Swelly. Here comes Perno.